My name's Nick Totton, and I'm going to be interviewing Carmen, Joanne, Ablack. So Carmen, hello.
Hey, Nick. I'm looking forward to seeing what emerges as we talk together today.
Me too. So I wonder if you could start out, having been part of the process of beginning the think tank, I wonder if you could share a bit about what your thinking was at the time.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. For me, there are a couple of things. One is that it seemed really important to me, this idea that we gather together and start looking at what do we mean by body psychotherapy and what is the territory, or something Liddy Evertson talked about a lot when I first joined the board was mapping the ground of the work we do. And the think tank emerged from that idea. And in a way, my wanting in the creation of the think tank and my hope is that we find a way to really define, in some sense, what it is that we are meaning by body psychotherapy in its widest sense, and that it becomes an inclusive home that also acknowledges what it is not.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to me a very important thing to do.
And how do you feel how do you feel we're getting on with that process?
As often in things in EABP, it takes longer than we first imagined, but I think that's because we're being very focused and careful to ensure that we're understanding each other as we go along, and that there is clarity and a sense of agreement about what we're doing and what we're doing next. And I think the idea that's really emerged that I think is very exciting is these videos, but it's also that these videos are an opportunity for the membership to engage with what we've been doing. And that as we do the different videos, we are showing more and more of the task of the work, and being able to get people's feedback about what do they think about some of the things we're discovering. So yeah, that's what comes immediately. I think there's something else there, but maybe I'll let you ask another question.
Well, I'm just wondering if you could say something about what you feel we are discovering, things that come to mind. That
yeah. I think one of the things we're discovering is that we sit in different, that each person almost uniquely begins to develop their particular map of body psychotherapy based on not just what they've been taught, but also what has drawn their interest as a practitioner, what they've maybe done as a writer or a researcher. And we're beginning to map how that looks in terms of where people sit on particular issues. And of course, as I try and think about it, I can't think of one particular polarity to talk about, but I guess there's something about looking at how we envisage energy, for example. And that some people will talk about energy and others won't talk about energy, but will talk about sensing into and feeling, and trying to get a sense of where do we all sit with that, and what is the shared understanding, even if the words are different. What is it that's emerging in that?
As you're talking, it reminds me of something that sociologists have found out about neighborhoods. That if you ask different people living in the same neighborhood to make a map of the neighborhood, the things they'll put on it, the things that they'll emphasize, will be completely different depending on their interests.
Yeah, and their perspective and how they engage in the neighborhood and what the neighborhood meant to them before.
Yes.
First got there and what it's become. That, I think that's a great analogy, actually, Nick, because I think that's part of what we've been doing in the think tank. The early work was very much about each of us sharing our perspectives on different things and trying to identify what are the key areas that might make sense to chew over together in order to find what it is we need to bring to the membership to ask them their thoughts and ideas about. And very much this idea of a cascading discussion that definitely leads somewhere. I think that's been one of the key things, as we've been really clear about those times when we've noticed we've kind of drifted into discussion, but then we, you know, one of us has anchored it back in. And why are we talking about this right now? What's the purpose? How does it help us build the picture that we're trying to build?
Well, that gives me my next question. Where do you feel we are trying to get to, or where would you like us to try to get to?
I think what I would like us to get to is through a series of different ways, the videos being one, to engage wider membership, but particularly to engage the people who influence the people within EABP and the wider body psychotherapy world who influence how we think about the different issues emerging. How, and of course, with what we've gone through as a world society, how do we conceive of body psychotherapy now and its place in the world? And how will body psychotherapy find a way to step into meeting the needs that are emerging and the needs within the environmental context, the needs within both the inner environment, i.e. what's going on inside of people and within communities, and then the wider environment. What are I don't want to say crossover because that's not quite the right word, more the sense of how is that being shaped and what is the role of body psychotherapy in that? And how do we think about that at a meta level, but also how do we think about that at the level of the practitioner, the trainee, the trainings? So it's multi-layered. And what do we want to be putting out into the world? What is the research that we need our members to start doing? It has a real possibility of linking with a lot of the other work of EABP and the wider body field. Yeah.
I know that you really want answers to emerge from a wider discussion, and I agree with you about that. That's entirely right. But at the same time, I'm still very curious about what your vision might be of what body psychotherapy has to offer.
Okay. Well, for me, one of the things that brought me to body psychotherapy and that made sense about it was a place where I was discovering a vocabulary, both verbal and non-verbal, for my unique experiencing through myself in relation to others. And I think self in relation to others is a key for me. And self being not a fixed entity, but more a process of discovering and deconstructing and reconstructing in light of the experience and the experiences we have, so that we have some, for want of a better word, and I might regret this word, but we have some orthodoxy within our traditions, but actually a willingness to not reify the orthodoxy, but to actually relook at it with the eyes of people who have lived through what we've lived through and who are supporting others to live through their unique lives. And that kind of brings me to where one of my visions is that body psychotherapy really embraces how it is going to really make space for differentiated understanding of each other, and for and to have a capacity for the theory and the theory into practice to really speak to all bodies. And I know that's something you're really keen on as well. But to me, that feels really important, that all theories and practices start with particular populations. But if we're really thinking of body psychotherapy as what can it offer the world society, both two-legged and four-legged, frankly, then how does that look? What is it that needs to happen? What needs to emerge?
Mm.
And a recognition that not every part of body psychotherapy is going to want to do that.
Mm.
But also having the discussions where we start to look at, and what are the aspects of that that actually none of us can ignore. And that feels to me like that's probably one of the most difficult conversations we're going to have to have. Yeah.
That's great. It's really great. And we could go on a lot longer, but we're trying to keep these short. So I think that's a really good place to stop. Thank you very much, Carmen. It's been great talking with you.
It's been really helpful hearing your questions, and I feel like I've really felt your support in helping me name the vision, which was great. Thank you.
I'm glad. Okay.